There are moments in our relationships where things can be coming at us really hard and really fast. Things can feel pretty intense quickly. And so today we're going to be talking about what we call slicing it thinner, how we can actually get to the core of what's happening underneath all of the extra emotion and fluff that we're experiencing on the outside. And so we're going to be sharing tips of what that looks like and how you know that you need to continue to go a little deeper to the root of the issue. And that's what we talk about. Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open those emotions that are taking us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I'm your host, Tara Wages, and joining me is marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis Hill. Together, they have founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection. And we are so glad you're here.
Yes. Hello, world.
Hi, friends. Slicing it thinner is a term that you use probably more than anyone. I don't know that I use it as often, or Tira. So just for our listeners, explain what that even means. Slice it thinner.
Our whole positioning is that we want people to live authentically, to be able to be open, real, vulnerable, transparent, etc. That's how we connect as humans. We're designed by that way. We're designed hardwired from birth. The problem is most of us have been affected by so many things, so many ingredients, people, interactions, circumstances, environment, and have gotten the message so many times to not do that. I think men are worse off in this culture than women because men are actually told boys don't cry. We kind of wish girls wouldn't either, at least go in a closet by yourself to do it. But we don't say girls aren't allowed to cry. We tell people verbally, non-verbally, who knows, thousands, tens of thousands of messages to not be authentic. Now they're introduced to the connection codes, so we're like, okay, there we go. Now be authentic. Got it. That sounds great. If we had magic fairy dust, we sprinkle some, we snap our fingers, and now they're able to be authentic, vulnerable. The vast majority of people either can't do that or just don't do that. So it sounds great. It's a great idea. Just be authentic from this moment forward. The vast majority of people just are not able to do that. So
can I pause for 1 second?
Absolutely.
Just for people that maybe this is their first episode listening and that they may not even know, what do you even mean by being authentic? What does it mean to be authentic?
Yeah. All of us are designed that way from birth. We have 2 new grandsons. One is 7 weeks old and one 3.5 months. Is that close? I get extra credit for being
you do.
pretty close
Very
on that.
good.
They're authentic. They never hesitate. Even if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, they are just conveying authentically at the core, vulnerably, this is me. This is what's happening with me. And, by the way, I need help. That's what we're designed to do. There's no birthday where that changes, where it's like, congratulations, you're 5, now stop being authentic.
So they are sharing when they're experiencing loneliness.
Yeah.
They are sharing when they're experiencing fear.
Absolutely.
They are sharing when they're experiencing anger because they're hungry.
Yep.
And so these babies are sharing what's happening inside their body as it's happening.
Yep. We never sit around wondering, what's happening with this little guy? We can't tell. Nope, you can tell. We always know. They're always authentic, always vulnerable. It's very clear. That's never supposed to change. And unfortunately, and again, there's no birthday where we're like, happy birthday, you're 8. Now stop experiencing what you're experiencing and shut up about it. But we do that, again, non-verbally through tons and tons of smaller messages. So then people become less and less authentic. And we hear from families all the time that the parents are like, our 14-year-old never shares with us anymore. And what they don't realize is they've been telling that 14-year-old for 10 years not to be authentic, not to be vulnerable, just get over it. And I'm not saying the parents are doing that from a bad heart. They're frequently doing it from a good intention. You know, this 14-year-old, whatever, this 14-year-old girl is brokenhearted that this boy at school doesn't like her. And the parents say, oh, it's fine. You're going to be fine. Wait till you're an adult. Then you'll have real problems. What they just said to that 14-year-old is, your experience doesn't matter. Your emotion doesn't matter. Therefore, you don't matter. So just shut up about it, or at least stop experiencing it. So this 14-year-old then learns, and again, they learn it when they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Don't be authentic. Don't be vulnerable. Don't share. you will not be met with safety. You will not be met with presence and kindness and what we call oohing. So, and they learn to shut down more and more. So then by the time they're 14, 15, whatever, they don't share anymore. And then the parents are bewildered. It's like, how come my 15-year-old isn't honest and open about what's happening for them? Because you've been telling them for a decade not to be. So, whatever that scenario is, but to say to a 15-year-old, okay, well, starting from this moment forward, just be totally open, authentic, real with your parents and with yourself and with whoever. Most people can't do that. It's just too much. So we developed the phrase of slicing it thinner, the idea that's too big of a piece. They just can't handle that much. So we have to slice it thinner. So for me to say, and again, whatever the relationship is, but for me to say to a wife, just convey to him authentically, vulnerably, everything. She can't. It's too much. So we have to slice it thinner to say, so what happens for you around the idea of sharing with him? Because she's already conveyed to me, and again, if this is in session, she's already conveyed that she's not going to turn to him and be authentic. She's not going to, it's too dangerous. It's too much to be vulnerable. So I'm going to slice it thinner and go, okay, I hear that. So what happens for you around the idea of sharing with him authentically? And again, she may say, I'd rather not say. I don't want to just start a fight with him. Okay. And we call that not resisting the energy. I'm following her energy. They go, so what happens for you around that idea? The idea that would lead to a fight. So I'm just going to find the insertion point, the piece that's small enough that she can handle that, because I'm trying to get her to the core emotions. And I'm pointing at the wheel there. I'm trying to get her to the core, the authentic self, but she can't handle the big piece. It's too much. So I'm just going to keep slicing it thinner, and then she'll finally get there. One of my favorite stories of slicing it thinner, we were hired by a company to come in, and we spent several days with them, so it was a pretty big event for them. And one of the things we did, we met with each department, which each department somewhere 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people in the department, and we would do the wheel with them at the very beginning. So the person would do the wheel, slide it over to the next person, and I think it was the third person in that particular department, that group. And it was a young woman, and we didn't know at the time, but she had only worked there for a few weeks. And so the person to her left slid the wheel to her, and she pushed it away, and she goes, I can't do that. Now I have an option. I can resist her energy, and I can say, yeah, this is what we're doing. We were flown here. Your company spent a lot of money hiring us to do this. Everybody's done it. Everybody's doing it. You have to do it. Now we're going to war. Now I'm her enemy. I'm her attacker. I'm her adversary. Or I can ooh the girl in the moment, be present with her, be safe for her, follow her energy, and go, oh yeah, I hear you. So what happens? So she can't handle the big piece. Do the wheel. It's too big. I go, so what happens for you around the idea of doing the wheel? So I'm slicing it thinner. And she said, it's overwhelming. It's too much. I'm like, so what happens with overwhelming? She ends up doing the wheel. In the process of not doing the wheel, lots of tears. The people there, I think most, if not all of them, are connection coders. They're just oohing her. It's a beautiful experience. She got to joy. And I said, so is there any joy in being able to share any of this? I'm just curious. And she laughed. And she said, I guess I just did the wheel. And I said, oh my gosh, absolutely not. I wouldn't want you to do the wheel in this setting with these people because it's not safe for you. It's too overwhelming for you. And of course, she got my facetiousness, and she said, this is amazing that I was able to do that and that people were able to ooh me. And she said, I feel a lot of joy that they were present with me and that I was able to do that, because I, 2.5 minutes ago, was certain that I couldn't do this. So I just keep slicing it thinner. And we sit with couples all the time where, whatever, the first day after our last session, he says, okay, it's time to do the wheel. And he's demanding, he's commanding, he's directing her that it's time to do the wheel. And she goes, I don't want to. And he's, yes, you have to. Dr. Glenn said you have to. And so now they're going to war. And if he would learn to slice it thinner and go, oh, babe, so what happens for you around the idea of us doing the wheel? Because she can't handle doing the wheel. So just slice it thinner and help walk her through. And again, it can be any relationship, till we find the piece small enough that individual can handle.
So the overarching problem is that so many of us, if not all of us, have been rewired over time to not be able to identify the emotions that are firing in our body. Right. And even oftentimes, you shared on the last podcast that there may even be one that you really struggle with identifying with because of things that took place in your childhood. And so that is the overarching problem, is that we have been rewired and now we are trying to get back to our original wiring so we can experience connection in our bodies and in our homes. And by slicing things thinner, it helps us to break down little segments of it at a time so we're not overwhelmed by the big picture. And so I'm curious of what that looks like in someone's home. What is a sign for a partner? There are two people at their house, or you with your kid, and things are really starting to heat up. What's your signs that, like, okay, I need to slice this thinner? And how do you clue into that?
Yeah, resistance. Anytime again, there's 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 possibilities. The mom goes in to the 15-year-old and says, so what's happening with you today? And the 15-year-old goes, oh, nothing. Now the mom has a choice. She can resist the energy. She can go, no, we're going to live authentically in this house. I need to know what's happening with you. You need to tell me. Okay. Now you're going to war. I'm not saying that, and we use the phrase a lot, you can be totally correct and absolutely wrong. Mm-hmm. The mom is totally correct. Yes, we need to be authentic. Yes, we need to be vulnerable. Yes, we need to be real with what's happening in this home. You're totally correct information-wise. You are absolutely wrong relationship-wise, and it will not work. And the mom, the dad, the whoever can say, no, this is how our household operates. We are going to get to the core. Okay, good luck with that. I guarantee you it won't work. So anytime you experience resistance, you can choose to resist back and go, I'm bigger than you, stronger than you, faster than you. I'm going to force you to tell me what's real with you. Never work. Because even if you manage somehow to win that one battle, you've lost the relationship. We call that the court case. You forced it. You won the court case. You lost the relationship, but you won the court case. I don't want you to win the court case. I want you to win the relationship. So in that moment, in that scenario, the 15-year-old goes, oh, nothing. To be able to go, oh, okay. So what happens for you around the whole nothing thing? I feel like I might be missing something there. What happens for you when there's nothing happening? And you've sliced it a little bit thinner to try to find, and I want to make it abundantly clear, this does not always work. There are times that you're just not going to get anything from the other individual at all. That's fine. This is a long-term relationship. Virtually all relationships have a longer-term vision to them. So that's fine. You'll just come back, whatever, in an hour, in 6 hours the next day, and go, hey, so what's happening for you today? And you keep extending that invitation. You're inviting that person into themselves, inviting that person into their own experience. And when you do that, at some point, they will feel enough safety if you haven't resisted their energy. If you've resisted their energy, the turtle went back in the shell. And I remember as a kid growing up on a farm, and we'd find a turtle, and we'd get so excited, and the turtle would go in its shell. And we're sitting there yelling at the turtle like, come out. We like you. We want to see you. Guess what? That just made the turtle all the more committed to not coming out. And then if the turtle finally started to open, we get so excited, and we're yelling, the turtle would go back in the shell. So not from a bad heart, and I'm talking about when we're 4 and 5 years old, but the turtle goes back in the shell. And we do that with people all the time. Yeah. By our insistence and by our reaction to them. And it takes a lot of oohing to create that safety so that the turtle will come out and feel comfortable being vulnerable, being authentic with you.
And I would think that the oohing often happens in the in-between. So if you're going into your partner's room or your daughter's room and you're asking, what's happening with you today? And they resist and it ends up, you slice it thinner. What happens with the idea of nothing? And they still are resisting. Yeah. But then 2 hours later, they come downstairs and they tell you something you haven't asked. But they tell you like, oh, Jimmy made fun of my shirt today at school. And then you resist their energy. Guess what? The next time you ask them, you're back at square one. You're back at zero because you've resisted their energy in the in-between. I will say that this is the area that I struggle with the worst, specifically with my kids, and even specifically with certain kids that I have. I have discovered that I resist a couple of their energies pretty intensely, pretty often. And it's something that last night, Wes and I were going to bed, and I was like, yeah, this is the pattern that we've created with this kid. And he's like, yeah, but last night we did such a good job. And I'm like, you're right. We did a good job one time out of however many years we've been living with this child now. We're going to have to double that amount of time of not resisting their energy to do that. And I think what's difficult is when they catch you off guard with it. When you're going into their room and asking them what's happening and they resist, you're walking in mentally prepared. You're like, oh, I'm ready to ooh you. I have my hat on. Like I'm about to rock this. But when they come into your space and maybe you're doing the dishes or you're working, last night I was trying to get a last email out, and they say something to me. Now I'm resisting their energy because I'm caught off guard. I don't have my ooh hat on. And so it really does have to become a lifestyle thing if you're wanting to see long-term change over time, and to transition those moments where you're approaching them. Because if you approach them, you can't expect them to connect with you if when they approach you, you're not connecting with them.
And I have to point out, and for all of our listeners, for Phyllis and me, for everybody, we frequently do this from a good intention, great motivation, great heart. But just like the example you gave, that this little one shares that Jimmy was mean to me, and we go, oh, Jimmy doesn't matter. Who cares? You won't even remember him 2 years from now. You won't even remember who he was. And forget him. He's just a mean kid, and he probably didn't even mean anything by it, but it doesn't even matter. And for most people, they're like, yeah, I'm helping this child not to be overwhelmed by Jimmy. What you just did is disregarded the child's experience. You just disregarded the child's emotion, and therefore you disregarded the child in the process of trying to regard the child. So I can't emphasize that enough. I'm not fussing at the parents that do this, but it makes it worse, not better. And the child does not feel seen and heard and valued in that moment.
I'm trying to think of examples with like us couples, right? Like because I think I'm trying to figure out the slicing it thinner when you and I are talking about something, but we're obviously missing each other. And this has actually happened in session, so it's not really about us, but it was a couple we were in session with. And a dam broke during the session, and it was with her. And so she said so many things as she was sobbing. And in those moments, that's where I think even the idea of slicing it thinner, it's slowing it down, not stopping her. Like she needs to get it all said. But a lot of what she said, I think when your emotions are super heightened, and maybe this is absolutely true with children as well, almost what they're saying isn't, you got to know, it's not accurate. It's just, it's like you've really opened up a floodgate and it's just all coming out really fast. And so a lot is being said. And if, as the listener, you may feel hurt by what's being said. And in the hurt, you're thinking that wasn't true. But if that's what you react to, you're going to just shut that all down. And that if that's your spouse or if your kid, they're not going to trust. They're going to go, ooh, that wasn't a safe moment. I'm not ever going to do that again. And yet within your bodies, number one, you got to get that out. But also it's going to come out one way or the other. Like it's either going to come out in another explosion of some kind where you're going to spit nails at whoever's listening, or it's going to come out in a physical ailment, or your body, your gut, something is going to react and so I just think about in those moments being able to not interrupt, let it all be said, and then find an insertion point.
Yeah. And with that couple, and this happened many hundreds of times, so it's not this one unique scenario with this couple, But she just really got activated. And at one point she said, "You don't care about me. You've never cared about me." So what do you think his response was?
Yes, I have. Or
What?
Yeah.
We've been together, whatever, X number of years. I've always cared about you.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I do is for you. And do you think that helped her?
Yeah.
And we usually let it run its course for a bit. For one thing, because we're learning them. We want to learn their dynamic. And this is a new couple, so we're just figuring out what happens for them. So then finally I asked him, I said, do you think that helped her just now? And he pauses and he goes, no. And I says, does it usually help her? And he goes, no. I said, do you think it might this afternoon? If you do that again this afternoon? He goes, no. What about tomorrow? No. Next week? Next month? I'm just curious. Do you think it'll ever help her? He's like, you know what we could do? We could throw that plan out the window, because if based on your testimony it never works, let's just don't do that anymore. And he's like, yeah, okay, fine. I said, what do you think might help her? What do you think might happen that it actually would be a benefit? He said, if I oohed her, because he'd already learned the ooh. And I said, oh, could we try that next time? And it was amazing, because she kept going. It was a dam bursting. It was pretty overwhelming. And he oohed her. I literally turned her back to him. And she turned towards, and as a human behavior researcher, I'm just fascinated watching humans. And she turned towards him. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is too freaking, I don't like saying easy. That was pretty darn easy. It was a heck of a lot easier than what they'd been doing the last 10 minutes. But it was certainly simple. And so we're observing this. I'm like, dear goodness, all he did was ooh her. He didn't solve any problems. He didn't even address the problems. He just oohed her, and she literally turned her body to face him, and she just wept. At one point, she actually leaned towards him and leaned into him. I'm thinking but again, it was just too much. Is she accurate in saying you don't care about me, you've never cared about me? Absolutely not. And he can take her to court, hire a private investigator, present to a judge and a jury, and prove that he has cared about her probably thousands of times, and he would win that court case, and he would lose the relationship. I don't care about the court case. I want him to win the relationship. So he was able to slow down, get her to slice it thinner, and find out what was happening with her.
Yeah, I love that. So how did he get her to slice it thinner? Like, now go back into what are the questions that we ask each other to slice it thinner in those moments?
And it's almost always just the three phrases. And finally he slowed down enough to say to her, so what happens for you?
Can we do it? Ask me the phrase.
Which part?
Ask me what's happening with me.
So what's happening?
I don't know.
You? Oh.
I don't know what's happening.
Wow. Okay. So what happens for you not knowing? I feel pain in that. I feel sadness for you to not even know. So help me get what happens for you that you don't even know what's happening for you there, because I feel like I'm missing that part.
I don't even want to tell you.
Oh. I hear that. So I do this as my vocation, so if I cry too much, I apologize to our listeners. But I've done this in real life so many times, and it's so moving to me. So I hear that. So what do you think might happen if you did tell me?
You're going to get mad at whatever I say.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, you're just going to argue with me.
Yeah.
It's going to end in an argument.
That makes sense. I guess I wouldn't want to tell me either. Yeah. How many times does that happen for us?
Yeah, probably a lot.
Wow.
Every day. Yeah. I love that. What you just shared, I just have to pause, because that was an ooh. How you just said, oh, I wouldn't want to talk to me either. That was a non-resisting of the energy. Mm-hmm. Oh. And that was a form of an ooh. That was saying, it makes sense to me why you would feel that way. And I think that's where so many of us are missing. In your example that you gave, is because we're saying, he said to her, oh no, I've loved you 1,000 times.
And he's correct.
But for you to say, oh, based on your experience with me, I wouldn't want to talk to me either. When we can say that to each other, And it doesn't make you a bad person. I think that's been something that in my own relationship, I really had to come to terms with, that my misses don't make me a bad person. For me to defend myself is ruining my relationship. But for me to get curious about the pain that I'm causing my family members, that is what connects us. Yeah. And I think that is where we as humans miss so many times, because we don't want to be the bad person. Yeah. And even last night when I was missing with my kids, I was missing with them a lot. And for my oldest to be like, oh, Mama, you ask us to stop and take breaths, but you're not doing that. And I could have been like, I'm the mom.
Right.
I don't need to take breaths. I need you to brush your teeth like I've told you to do 10 times. But for me to slow down and be like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're right about that. Like, we don't give each other space to call us in to be better. Like, she was calling me in that moment. She wasn't calling me out. Right. She was calling me in and be like, hey, Mama, I think you can be better than what you're being right now.
And a side note, but what incredible partnership. And I know a ton of parents, and I was raised this way by my parents, and then I learned to do it that way. It's like, oh, no, I'm in charge here. I'm the parent. Don't you dare ask me anything. Don't you dare question anything that I do. And you can do that. You can go to war with your kids, and you can dominate them. And at some point, I don't know what, when they're 12, 13, 14, they'll just move away from you. And we've mentioned this before in the podcast. In our culture, we go, oh, they're just teenagers. No, they are shut down humans because they've been shut down for a decade. That's the current view of teenage years. But it doesn't have to be that way.
Can we go back to the couple, the moment? I think it's super powerful when your answer was, I don't know. And maybe for the listeners, even slowing this down because I just think, wow, that is a go-to.
Yeah.
It's a safety moment. I feel safer just saying, I don't know. And I think in couples, whether you're married or not, and in relationships of that depth, and it can even be with a boss. If your boss is asking a question, and it's just, I don't know, is safer. It just feels safer.
Yeah.
So you were in that moment slicing it thinner by asking. So because I think what often happens when this person says, I don't know, it's a back off. And especially like I think with a couple, he did. Like when she said, I don't know, it was almost like end of discussion. But that's where you miss that next layer of depth. Right. That's where you backing off is almost okay, discussion's over, end of that. And in the moment that may feel better, but yet what you did, can you repeat that? When she said, I don't know, what did you say?
Again, the three phrases are go-to for me. I just go, ooh, wow. So what happens for you about not knowing? That sounds painful to me to not know.
And then that's what he said,
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
And then what did you say?
I know at some point I was like, I know, I just don't want to share with you.
Right. Which is really like the saying, when you said, I don't know, that feels safer than saying, I don't want to share with you.
And I would have been totally correct to say to you, yes, you do know.
Yeah.
You're just not willing to share it with me. And I would have been correct. Nailed it. And absolutely wrong.
Right.
And again, the reason it's so emotional for me is because I've experienced this in session with probably thousands of times, seeing that exact thing. And we're doing an enactment, but I've seen it in real life. And usually the other person says, yes, you do know. You need to tell me. If we're going to have a relationship, you have to share it. You're going to war.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, doesn't matter to me. I'm not coming home with you. You can do what you want.
Yeah.
But you'll never win.
It's lack of safety.
Right.
Like that, if you would have, to respond the way that you just now did, to me, says to the other, yeah, I'm not safe. And though,
Yeah, I'm emphasizing the fact that I'm not safe.
right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't create a bridge between the two. It doesn't feel safe. It doesn't break down any walls. It doesn't, like, there's not a mat laid out in front, nothing. And so you said, I don't want to share. And then you slowed down. I feel like it all goes into I pictured as slow motion. Things were feeling really fast at first. Whatever happened that led to the question prior to that was pretty fast. Maybe a lot of emotion. And then you say, I don't know, which could be it's like the door could be slammed shut right there. And both people just walk away, miss more connection, just go back to if you're on a boxing mat, they go to their corners, but it could just be all over right there. But when you're slicing it thinner or slowing it down, it's that next question. It's the ooh, which I think we often miss, because you just oohed. Then you said, what happens with that? And then you put that sounds painful. You put something extra on there. But then you responded,
I don't want to share with you.
I don't want to share with you. Which the other could respond with, what's wrong with me? I'm just, you know, I'm your spouse or I'm your whatever. But that won't get you anywhere. That slams the door shut and puts a nail in it.
And I would be totally
locks
correct,
it tight.
whether we're a partner, pair, or whatever. But to say to you, Tira, if we're going to have a close relationship, you have to share with me. Mm-hmm. I nailed it. I am totally correct and absolutely wrong. And that will never, because again, even if I'm able to, whatever, browbeat, force you to share something authentically in that moment, maybe, and again, that's, iffy, maybe I do, but I guarantee you that sets you up for next time. You will be even less likely to share with me. And you will not only avoid me, you will avoid me. So, and I see this all the time in lots of relationships. He walks in the room and the other person exits the room because the person doesn't even want to engage at all or run the risk of having to engage. So even if I somehow was able to, whatever you want to call it, force you, manipulate you, pressure you into sharing with me what's happening, I lose the relationship.
Yeah, lose the connection. So you slowed it down. You asked, you said, I don't want to share it with you.
And again, she can't handle the big piece. Oh, what's happening with you? That's the big piece.
Right.
And she can't handle that. So I'm just going to slice it thin and go.
So then what was the next? How did you respond to that? Do you remember?
When she said, I don't know. And so I'm just going to.
No, the second one where she said, I don't want to share it with you.
I'm just saying, so what happens around that? And also just a little slant on the three phrases to go, oh, okay. So what would happen if you did share? I'm just right back to the what happens, a different.
Yeah, and that's a good one because I think that led you to then say we would have an argument.
Right.
That is your experience of past events. That's your body saying, danger, beware.
Yeah, don't do this.
We may have an argument here if you answer this question. So it's better if you say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's the danger, beware of the possibility. And if you're the one in this situation where you are often saying, I don't know, to protect yourself, there is a way to go about this where you can start that answer with saying, I feel fear telling you.
I've told my kids to say this to me, and they have been doing it, and it does. It changes everything.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, I'm like, if you ever feel fear of telling me something, start it with that sentence.
Yeah.
And it does. And it doesn't matter how old you are. Right. That's such a powerful tool.
Yeah. And I think I've shared this many times on our podcast, how often I, even to this day, start sentences with you where I say, I feel fear telling you. What's that? Where does that fear come from? History, our history.
Yeah.
And what am I afraid of? Oh, it's the hours of fights that we used to have. It's the days. And I know Glenn's been pretty open about this. Like, he would so often start them. The questions would come at me at 11 p.m.
That's because we didn't have anything scheduled.
And by 10, I'm done. My brain is done. I'm so tired. And so to get a question of any sort, and then that so often back in the day would lead to a fight that would last for hours. So it would be 2 or 3 a.m. and we were still at it. I was still not getting the right answers.
And even if it wasn't a fight, it was just a discussion from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Yeah. I mean, it would just, and so it's like my body remembers those. And so even to this day, which that's not our pattern anymore and hasn't been for years and years, but it's that initial question that something inside me panics. Like, oh my goodness, if I run through all the possibilities. So I can say, I don't know. That feels safe. But I also can say, I feel fear in telling you. Yeah. And then Glenn will slice that thinner, and he'll say, ooh, what happens with the fear? And then I would be able to say, I feel fear of an argument.
Yeah, and again, I would be totally correct to say to Phyllis, babe, we haven't done that in years and years.
Sure.
I don't operate that way anymore. Right. Nailed it. I'm totally correct. The information, the logistics, the content is totally accurate and correct, and absolutely wrong. Because now I'm disregarding her experience, I'm disregarding her emotion, therefore I'm disregarding her and guaranteeing, even if I manage to, convince her that I don't operate that way anymore, I didn't connect with her. All I did was shut her down.
Yeah. And so it's the slowing down, I think, is so key of what we're talking about today, which is slicing it thinner is the slowing it down. So we've played it out here where Glenn is more slowing it down and really getting and asking it's like the door. I always visualize a door slowly opening. You're slowly peeking around the door, and the safer you feel, the wider the door is going to get. And eventually you're going to actually ask the person to come in. But in that moment, the reaction of the other makes such a difference. Like, I want to create safety I want to hear you. Yeah. And we do, some of it goes back to judgment, where we just feel like, no, you should just be more mature and just be able to say it. Right. Or you should be tougher and be able to say it. Okay, fine. Judge each other. Does that get you anywhere? No, it doesn't. So to create safety for each other is the idea that you can start with the sentence, I feel fear even telling you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then based on the other person's response, if they are like, oh, what's happening with the fear? That's an invitation. That says, I do care. I do want to hear. I do want to know. And again, that's the door getting opened wider. But if the other person responds in a way where you don't feel safe, then it's, whoa, I don't feel like I can open this door any wider.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize this enough, and this may be the big takeaway from this episode. Tira is totally wrong to not share authentically. Nailed it. Tira's wrong, Glenn's right. Okay, there we go. We settled it. Judge and the jury agree. The Tira's wrong, Glenn's right. Okay, we're not going to connect. But so it's really fascinating to watch humans. We work to our own detriment relationally. And so I prove to the judge and the jury, to God, to myself, to the universe, that I'm right, Tira's wrong. Nailed it. I'm not going to connect with her at all. I don't even know what the victory is. And I guess I walk away, and literally, maybe it's an identity issue, I'm not sure, but I walk away going, yep, I was right, Tira's wrong. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
We haven't accomplished anything other than anything beneficial. It's very detrimental. So it doesn't achieve anything other than the fact that I shut her down and prove to the universe that I'm right, she's wrong.
There are two elements that keep coming up for me in that. And the first is the curiosity element. And that's something that we talk a lot about. And so in that scenario with Glenn and I, or with you and your child, or you and your partner, it is turning curious about them. And that goes with, okay, I'm going to put my defensiveness down. I'm not going to be defensive right now. I'm going to be curious about their experience. I finally got, for the first time, it actually felt like a very pivotal moment in my life, a child say to me, "You don't get my life." And of course I get their life. Like, I've been their age. I've experienced those things, and I could just say that to them. Of course I get your life.
And you'd be totally correct.
And I would be totally correct.
Absolutely wrong.
But, and this has been a turning point for us recently.
Wow.
I got curious. Oh, yeah. And what's happening. And when we can turn curious with them, with each other, and we've had several episodes about this lately. This is a core element to the connection codes, is that curiosity. Yeah. Glenn continually asking me those questions in a soft tone and in a curious manner It opens you up. And that leads to point number 2 of I'm telling Glenn or your partner's telling you things you don't want to hear. It's not easy to be curious sometimes. And it can be painful to be curious sometimes. And you have to put your own ego aside to connect with each other. Because if you're going into it with the defensive mode and the not curious mode, that's when you disconnect. But when you can go into it and be willing to say, oh, I can see why you wouldn't want to share this with me. Oh, I missed on that. It is hard to do. There have been moments in our marriage over the last few years where I've been so mad at Wes, and I think he should be the one to come in and make it better. I specifically remember like an argument 2 or 3 years ago. He should be the one to do it. And I go, no, I know better now. That's the downfall of the connection codes, is that now better. Now you know the right thing to do, and it's not the easy thing to do sometimes, because it can feel good to fight and it can feel good to be right, even if that only lasts 5 seconds. The feeling of being right can last 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And so to put that aside, you connect.
Yeah, and I would add, and I totally get what you're saying, that you're hearing things that you don't want to hear, but ultimately you do want to hear. Yes.
Yeah, in the moment it's painful.
If Tira doesn't feel safe talking to me, if Tira's protection is, I don't know, I just don't know, I want to know that. Yeah. I need to know that. And again, I get it can be painful in that moment, but we don't have an option here.
Yeah.
If we're going to have a relationship, if we're going to have an ongoing relationship, I need to know. It was really fascinating. Yesterday, I did an intake session with a pastor of a big church and his wife, and he was very respectful. But he was mesmerized. And he's, wait, you're telling me that I can share with her authentically? And he was stunned by this. He's been a pastor for, I don't remember, I think he said 27 years, something like that. And I've been doing this long enough, I get jaundiced to tell him, because I'm sitting there going, what? Of course. And he was bewildered at the concept of any relationship, but of a husband and wife being authentic with each other. And she cried and cried and cried. It was beautiful. But he was just completely, I don't even know what the word is, like startled at the idea, because he has taught marriage classes his whole career explaining how to not share authentically, how to learn to navigate around all of the authenticity so that you don't end up in a fight. And he said, I have a lot to think about, because I don't understand. I don't even understand what language you're speaking here. And that was great and horrible at the same time. So for most of us, we don't even think that's possible, which we've shared before. The second decade of our marriage, we taught all the marriage classes because we learned how not to talk to each other. Yeah. And we talked, we had kids, but we learned not to and what we were told over and over again is you just have to learn to avoid, to navigate around trigger topics. Everything is a trigger topic for us. So we just didn't talk. Yeah. There you go. Nailed it. And we weren't connected at all, but we learned how not to talk about trigger topics. Therefore, we didn't fight. Therefore, everybody thought we had a great marriage.
Yeah. That's so helpful to hear. And so as we are wrapping up this episode, the things that I and Glenn and Phyllis definitely add, if there are things that I miss on this, to take away. So when you find yourself in that moment with someone and they are resisting your energy, that's your clue number 1. They are resisting me. There actually is something happening underneath the surface. So now I've got to take off my defensive hat and put on my curious hat and slow down. And I'm going to slow down by asking what is happening with them. And there are different ways to do it. What's happening with that? Or what happened if this happens? And if they continue to resist, then you realize in that moment, I've got to build safety outside of this room. I've missed now for a while where they don't feel safe enough to share with me. So I need to be safe in those in-between moments for them. And
can I say specifically what that might look like is literally in that moment to say to them, I feel a lot of sadness that you don't feel safe sharing with me. I feel some guilt in that. I think I've missed with you on this, and that guilt's tapping me on the shoulder, telling me I can do this better. I'm going to do this better today and tomorrow. And my mission is to get it so that you do feel safe with me. So thank you for letting me know you don't feel safe, and now I know what to do next. And I'm going to win you. I'm going to win this relationship. And then you just turn and walk away. I've never seen the person that's, what? No, you I mean, people are, again, I was out with tons of people that the other is just, wait, what? That was different. That's a what? And they don't know what to do with it. But, again, I'm not demanding, I'm not commanding, I'm not ordering you to be authentic with me because I can't. It just doesn't work. But my mission now is to create an atmosphere where you are safe, that you feel safe enough to share with me.
I think that is so incredibly powerful. Yes. And I think that's a great way to even end that conversation, just to acknowledge the lack of safety that you have when people are resisting against you, the safety that they feel with you, and to know that we all are humans and we all miss.
Yep.
And you now have the tools to do better. And if you want to live in connection with those around you. And so we wrap up every episode by doing our core emotion wheel. And that is the 4-minute tool that Dr. Glenn and Phyllis have created that helps you to slice things thinner when you're taking it one emotion at a time. So you can learn how to identify what's happening in your body so you can show up as that authentic self day in and day out, because now you know what it actually feels like.
Yeah. Have we been talking about the free download that people can go?
Yes, there is a free download in the show notes where you can access the core emotion wheel.
Yeah, because there's rules to the wheel. A tool very quickly can become a weapon if not used properly. So we encourage you to do that and follow the rules of the wheel. Okay.
First?
Yeah. Let's see. For me today, what has happened for me? Nope. No emotions at all. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Was that what it was? A ton of joy just getting to be with you. It's a new year. I love life with you. It startles me. We talk about this a lot. It's like everything that we do is just amazing. I just love getting to be with you. I'm very thankful that we've been diligent as long as we have to get to be at this point. A lot of anger at what in the world has happened to our society, and it's not a new development, it's many centuries, but the vast majority of people don't have a clue how to connect. We certainly didn't.
Wow.
A lot of anger that we miss so badly, but the people that were supposed to be teaching us, training us how to live life, missed so horribly. So much sadness in that, just for culture. It's amazing to me that I do this enactment with tear and I just shed tears, but I know that experience. I've seen it. I've experienced it personally, but I've seen it so many times with people. Again, anger that we got to make a change here. We have to help society. Hurt in that I've just wounded you, wounded us, which in turn wounded myself so many times. So much loneliness in that for so many years where we just were clueless. We missed each other so badly, and day in, day out, I was drowning in so much loneliness I didn't even recognize it. That I felt so unpartnered, unconnected with you. A lot of times fear that we've missed in what we conveyed, how we conveyed it. That's one of my greatest fears, is to do harm in the process of trying to do good. And that I just want to make sure that people are getting the message that we're conveying it well. And a lot of guilt and shame when I do miss people. It's one of my great challenges is, especially in session, going from 90 miles an hour, and then 3 minutes later I'm sitting with another couple that's going 1 mile an hour. And I feel I should be perfect at this, and I miss at times. And I miss at times with you, because I'm like, oh, no, babe, we're going 90 miles an hour, and I forget that, oh, we're just humans too, and I need to slow down with you in that moment.
Wow. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. I felt hurt last night when we left the restaurant and you ran to the car and abandoned me, and I had to find the car on my own.
Yep.
Felt some fear because I was cold too, and I could not find the car. So hurt and fear in that moment. A little sad that you were so cold you ran 90 miles an hour to get in that car.
I'm laughing about your pain.
So a little sad, and joy that I suggested next time you leave me in the restaurant and you go get the car and then pick me up at the door if you're going to run that fast. So that was 4 right there over that one incident. Let's see. I think lonely. I think that I often share the same when it comes to lonely. It's tasks, all the tasks. But as many as our listeners know, your mom is in stage 5 kidney failure, and it is all the decisions. I feel like I am constantly her main caretaker, and just knowing how to proceed. And there's just lonely in that. Man, I'm alone in it. I think that leads me to anger in just, which I'm pretty good at expressing about just the support. I'm a daughter-in-law, and I'm like, I never thought I would be in this place of having to be the main caretaker of my mother-in-law. So anger in that at times, lonely in that as well. I think the guilt and shame, probably even in that, I experience at times that to ever complain, like to ever just process that as I feel then the guilt of just, oh, I should be extra kind now, extra patient. I should check on her more often. I should be doing more. So there's guilt and shame around that. And I'm thankful to be able to process it pretty quickly with you, because then I don't drown in any of it. So I'm very thankful so much right now in this hard season to be able to process, because even when I describe lonely, it's a very few feet of lonely. It's not a lot, because I'm able to process it. And then I feel the support of everyone around me because I just say it. I just talk about it. Yeah.
I love it.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you so much. I enjoy hearing you say like how often, like I miss in this and I missed in this and I missed in this, because I think the world, we need permission to say that we missed and to not be perfect and to not hide when we miss, and to know that we're all striving to do better. And it's by acknowledging those misses, that's how we grow. And that's how we connect with each other.
Yeah.
And so I thank you as our listeners for showing up each week and your reviews and just sharing each podcast. It means the world to us and helping us grow in 2024. And if you're listening and you're, wow, I'm realizing that maybe I don't feel safe with my partner, or I'm recognizing that they're resisting my energy a lot. Maybe they don't feel safe with me.
Wow.
Our Foundations Masterclass, that's where we teach you how to build safety with each other, especially if you're on the side that you recognize your partner doesn't feel safe with you. You get in there and buy that class. Enroll today. I'm putting it on you, bud, because you want your partner to feel safe with you, or you are doomed. You will live in a house disconnected for the rest of your life. And I don't know if that's 50 more years of marriage, or if it's 5, or if you're going to end up in a courtroom because you are not taking the steps to create safety in your home. And if you feel resistance from them, then it's imperative. And so our Foundations Masterclass teaches you the tools and the skills to build that safety and to learn how to see your partner and connect with them. And so you can find that in our show notes. And we also dive into the core emotion wheel there. And I just encourage you to really start that in 2024, building that safety. And not just with your spouse, with your grown kids, with your young kids, with your sisters. We know how sisters fight, with those around you. Just be a pillar of safety for humans. And thank you for being here. We do all of this
because you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.